So welcome everybody. In today's session, we are going to talk about top 10 development challenges in a distributed architecture using microservices. So before we start, let me give you a quick intro about myself. I am Ankur. I'm Director of Technology in Publicis Sapient. Been working with the industry for almost 22 years. I also run a blogging portal, waitcraft.com, for grooming technical and software architects. I've been certified in various cloud and API certifications. I've been a guest speaker on Elastic and avid blogger. And you can go to Waitcraft to read my blogs. And you can also reach out on Twitter for any questions. So let's get started. Today's session, we are going to talk about my experience on microservices and cloud native architecture. We are all familiar with microservices. It's been there in mainstream in last couple of years, and it's been there for last 6-7 years where everybody is talking about it. Everybody is now adopting microservices architecture. So we all have different learning. So in my past 5+ years working in cloud native and microservices architecture, there are many learnings which I wanted to summarize in this session. So hopefully you all get benefited out of this session. So before we deep dive into different challenges which I faced, I want to put my perspective from 3 different angles. The first one is about the people, because people, whether it's developers, whether it's stakeholders, whether it's business people, they all contribute to the architecture. So people aspect is, again, one of the core pillars, technology and engineering, the other core pillar, and the process is the third pillar. So all development challenges which you'll see, which I'm going to talk about, will fall into one of these buckets. That's how I envision that, you might also be experiencing in your organization. So let's jump into the first challenge, which I see when we start adopting microservices or distributed architecture. It's the first thing where everybody is talking about is organization culture. And organization culture is the most important thing when you start with any new architecture. It's not only just limited to microservices, right? Because if you remember Conway's law, which got introduced in 1968, got mentioned by Martin Fowler, any organization, whether it's development or it's a product organization, they broadly represented by the organization communication culture. That's the essence of the Conway's law. So if you start thinking about your organization in terms of UI developers, backend developers, and DBAs, you will end up producing the system which is similar to that. That's the essence of the law. So the key challenge is, to make sure that you try to build a team which is not a siloed, or you can say a vertical stack. It's mostly what you are going to do is that you want to create a team which is the combination of functional or the domain or the business perspective, right? So putting Conway's law in action, it's not easy, because there are things which we can influence in an organization, and there are things which we cannot influence in an organization. So it also depends on the structure, the political culture, and all those different aspects. But that's a key challenge, right? We all face that. So how do we handle that particular challenge? So recommendation based on my learning so far is, again, you need to ensure that your leadership buys into the distributed architecture or the microservices architecture first. If the leadership is not with you, definitely you will not see that happening across the team, right? So they need to understand that organization culture and the organization communication culture will drive how you are going to build the software. And that's what Martin also talked about, that instead of building that silo team, build the cross-functional team, right? And the second factor is about psychological safety. And this is one of my favorite areas, because I see Google has also acknowledged that. They have published if you have read about the DevOps report, that's what they call a DORA report for last 5 years. They talk about how developers perceive themselves in a particular environment. If they are not, kind of respected, they are not feeling uh, confident, they're not feeling getting the right set of environment, then basically you will not be able to build the right software with that mindset. So psychological safety is what I personally feel it's very important. You have to make sure the team understand why you are doing microservice architecture. They do understand, and then they are comfortable building that part as well. So you need to cultivate, and again, this is coming from all the key leaders, and I'm quoting this from Martin's blog, is that, build the product mindset. If you are building a microservice architecture with project mindset, it's going to be, again, very limited. You will not have a broader respect. So promote that culture, promote the other culture of, if you're building a particular architecture, you have to run it also. And you have seen it. That's how the DevOps has evolved in last 5 years. So if you groom that confidence, if you groom the team using these key tenets, I'd say that, every failure will be a learning opportunity, and you see that how you can handle this challenge. And there is always a learning, right? That you can use that learning when you are talking about how you can implement that in the future architecture. So the second part, and the second part of the challenge is how you can start enabling your team. And second challenge which I have seen is the full stack knowledge, in terms of whether it's team, whether it's other stakeholders about the microservices world. I know that it's still considered not as it's still a new technology, or it's still relatively new if you compare with other things. Then different people have different expectation. So just to give you some context, right, that full stack engineer, if you talk to your CEO, they might have a different understanding what a full stack engineer is. If you talk to a developer, he might be thinking, full stack means I need to do these 10 things, right? But it's not just the interpretation of full stack. It's also about how you perceive a full stack engineer should be. And Gartner quoted it very rightly, that if you are fully responsible for something end to end, that's a full stack for them, which is a very simple definition, but I think it's again effective word. But the key challenge which I feel is when you go to the reality, when you're implementing it, it's not easy to find such people, right? You will not find full stack from engineering perspective. You will not find people who are understanding and taking the full accountability of what they are developing. So, and it's because of lack of process, or you can say the environment in which we are all operating, and it's fast moving, and there are so many external factors. So how do we move forward from there, right? So my recommendation and what I have seen is that don't try to create a perfect team. You will always have 20% or 30% of your team to be more skilled in full stack. When I say full stack, they know some Java, Python, they know UI development, they know Docker, containerization, cloud, DevOps, and up to extent so that they can be operational and they can make it work. But their majority of team, like 30% to 40% of the team, you have to mentor them. So you need to create the right path. And that's the one challenge which I have seen in my experience, that how do you enable your team? It's also important. So that's the recommendation, is that how you create a path for rest of the team. And the third part is, don't beat the dead horse. Don't try that, everybody should be full stack. So specializations, if somebody is a specialized MongoDB expert, for example, that doesn't hurt, because sometimes suppose you are building something and you have a very specific problem, maybe you want to use that expertise. So don't just, get into the trap of I need everybody to be full stack. So we need to be practical also. So that's the second challenge, which I just wanted to highlight. The third one is, again, core to my heart. It's about the over-engineering. And when often as a technologist, we start looking at everything is an engineering problem. And then when we start solutioning it, we tend to over-engineer the solution, right? So And microservices is not away from that. We started the whole microservices concept got started because we wanted to make it more business centric. We wanted to make sure that we follow domain driven design. We follow business needs, that I want to scale quickly. I want to enable the organization so that there are less failures and all. But over the period, which we are seeing, and everybody will acknowledge that it's becoming more and more complex. So the stakeholders also do not have the same expectation they used to have 5 years back. That's a key challenge which I'm seeing right now. They have a higher expectation. Earlier, people were okay if the site is down for say 3 minutes, right? But everybody is now aware of distributed architecture, microservices, cloud. So they have like millisecond downtime expectation. They know that you can time, you need to bring the products to market quickly. So they understand there is a complexity behind it, but they do also understand that we are enabling our developers and technical team and engineering team to bring the products quickly to the market. So the expectation is the key challenge. That's why you have to also understand that how do you solve and make sure that you meet those new expectations which we are seeing in the newer world. So my recommendation, coming from last 5 years of what I've been seeing and reading about from industry experts as well, is that keep your focus in solving business problem. It's not simple. I understand that there are always different priorities, but if somehow we need to make sure, whether it's developers, whether it's your testers, you need to help them get the business context first and give them the business knowledge, the domain knowledge. That will keep their engineering focus also on solving the business problem. And I know in this world, we get to have a lot of cool technologies. Every day there is something new coming up. But that doesn't mean that that's going to help solve the business problem. Business wants something which can help them get the business outcome. So my second point is that cool tech is good, but focus on solving again the business problem, tying back to the first point. And simplification, I understand it's not easy, but we as leaders and we as seniors, we need to make sure that we can keep it simple, and the team also, we get the same message that how to keep the architecture or engineering simple. So don't solve the problems which that's the essence of our learning in the life. Don't solve the problem which have already been solved. For example, I just quoted few, that if you're using service communication, if you're using service mesh, you use that rather than try to start building the service mesh framework yourself, right? So there are, whether it's related to architecture pattern, whether it's related to a particular technology, or following as simple as 12-factor principles, which Shiraku kind of highlighted in the past, you can use it and keep it more simple. So I think that's the essence of it, that if you keep it something which team can follow, team can understand, that's more effective. And that's the essence of not over-engineering the part which we are talking about. The fourth factor is more about how you see the backlog of work, right? And it's related to the process aspect, or like, if you remember the first slide, process, people, and technology. You have, again, business wants more output, right? So there is always a growing backlog of work items. Now, as a technologist, as an engineering team, that we have that list, and every sprint, every development cycle, we discuss, and with business, that these are, business will give you a prioritized list, and we have to make sure that we meet their expectation, right? So the key challenges which I have seen is, development team comes with a mindset where they get involved at a very later stage with the product team or the business team. And that, in my view, is that it's too late. If the requirements already signed off, or something which is already, without checking whether it's technically feasible or not, you have already passed that gate. And then if you push back to business that, oh, it's not possible for me to now develop this, then it's too late and you will be pushed to the corner. So that's where we need to first see that, how you get involved, and that involvement part is where I see a key challenge. The second part is where when you get to the estimating your work, because that's your project managers need that to plan the roadmap. You see that either developers are overestimating or being over aggressive or underestimating, and both side of the world are something which is not going to help, right? So, and I've seen that this happens quite often. So we talked about awareness of the business need. That is a key essence all the time. So how do we solve that? And I think in my experience, engaging with business and product team and asking why and what, and is that why you are doing this, why you need. Sometimes I've seen this, a simple question might unpack something bigger, and that's why even a developer, even a new developer who is new to the team, may bring a fresh perspective, right? So it's very important that we engage with business, we understand and ask the right questions, and we involve early, right? It's shift left is not only for technology, shift left is also for requirements gathering. So it's always, I recommend that, if you can bring on developers early in the game, so that they can identify, the second point is related to that, they can identify few things which are accelerators, few things they can see that, these are something which I can help you accelerate. They can come up with new suggestions, and maybe they can build something which can help you develop a product faster and deliver faster. So estimating is always an essence, and we can guide the team that how you can make sure that you estimate, but estimates are estimates. You need to make sure that the business understand if you discover something new, and they get informed on time. So that's something which is my third recommendation. You have to inform them. Nobody wants surprises these days. You need to give them, okay, this is something which I have seen, and based, just surface all the issues early on in the game. And then sharing your perspective is the essence, because I still believe even if you're a junior developer, you're a senior developer, it's always good. Don't shy away from asking questions. Don't shy away from sharing your perspective. That's the key recommendation. So the fifth thing, which the challenge perspective, which I have seen in terms of now it's a technology, we are moving towards a technology angle now. So if you remember the people process technology, so language and framework is an essence when we are talking about distributed architecture. Now, when I say language and framework, I'm just giving an example of Java, JEE, is that Java has evolved in the last 15 years, and there are many frameworks. You can see that, it started with the, simple EJB and all. And then we have some lightweight frameworks like Spring Framework. We have reactive frameworks. We have frameworks built on different paradigms, right? So, and nowadays you must have heard Oracle has, they came up with Halidon, and Quarkus is a new. So these are new frameworks coming up. So every day there is something new coming up. So developer, the key challenge which I see is they get overwhelmed, and then they think that, I have to learn a new framework. There's a fear in them, considering I've been working in Spring Framework for that matter for 10 years, learning something Halidon, maybe not something which they want. But the other part is that apart from the skill set is what is the enterprise guidance, and enterprise right now, either they are too slow to respond to these new demands, or they are not able to find the right sort of people who can answer this question, what is the best and suitable framework or even language, right? Whether it's Python, Java, or Golang nowadays, that what is the best framework. So that's a key challenge which I see that, it's, every day we are facing this question by, especially the engineering team. And what I would recommend is that don't get, kind of overwhelmed by the set of languages and frameworks are giving you choices. You have many choices in today's world. It doesn't mean that you have to accept all those parameters and take all those choices, learn everything. We choose something which is suitable, choose something suitable as per your context. So suppose I've seen this and I've used Play framework. I'm quoting that example a few years back. We were building something for a hotel website, and we felt that, reactive is where we wanted to build a reactive system. So we chose certain microservices to be developed in Play framework. If you feel that certain things are best suited for a Spring framework, go ahead with that. If you think that, certain things are suited for Python, because it's something which is very simple and effective, and you are building something data science related or anything, which is better suited, use that. So don't get overwhelmed. If you have your fundamentals right, believe me, learning a new language, it's not difficult. And also your microservice world doesn't tell you that you have to stick to one language. You can choose what is more suitable in a particular context, right? So polyglot is the key. That you see that microservices world is more about, having what is more suitable rather than choosing and saying that every microservice I will develop in Java. So change is the only constant, is the last message, that, you have to keep also exploring the new languages. Some languages, like nowadays, you will see that they are very lightweight, like Halidon, and you will see that Quarkus are very lightweight. And maybe when you are doing something serverless, where you need a startup time to be very quick, then maybe that is the right language or the framework to choose for. So you need to keep that in mind, that keep experimenting with those. Change the only constant, and you don't need to, kind of make that, I have to only use one language in microservice world, right? So the sixth thing which I have seen, once you choose the language and framework, it comes about the communication, that now you have many microservices and how the services are now talking to each other. So selecting the right communication pattern is something which I've seen is a bigger challenge, because inter-service communication, again, when you Google it out, you'll see many patterns, right? There is a synchronous patterns, there are asynchronous patterns. Some people are saying that, synchronous is bad. Some are saying asynchronous is, has some resiliency and all those good things, but then maintaining it could be a challenge. So there is multiple school of thoughts, and that's a key challenge, that might confuse you. And then when you start implementing the other challenges, you will see that there are so many areas which you will discover something new when you are implementing. So the recommendation is that, again, similar to the language and framework, there is no silver bullet, that's for sure. You need to make sure that you understand different patterns, right? That if you are developing a request response, and maybe it's still, REST is still not bad. If you're something using very simple, it's still proven, it's easy to understand for developers. So maybe that's good for in a particular scenario. If you want to develop a decoupled system, you can create an event-driven application, and an event-driven is the future. And again, event-driven is supported by your async patterns, and then again, they have a lot of patterns to choose for. So go read about what is Saga pattern, where you can differentiate between a choreographer, where you have a central orchestration has a central component. Choreography is a little bit different. How you can use CQRS, where you can separate out the command and query, or event sourcing, where you are saving everything as an event and replaying that, right? So understand these patterns and apply as per your context. There is no silver bullet for sure. And the other thing which I see that it's evolving and need consideration is that what is the format in which you can talk. Right now we have many choices, which is good, and which can be overwhelming, but you need to see that JSON has been a standard for quite a while now, after SOAP and all, and you can see that now GraphQL is giving you a unified endpoint to talk, and it's providing your UI with one single endpoint so that you can aggregate the data and take care of it. Or maybe it's suitable in certain UI application. Similarly, if you are building a chatty and a binary protocol based application, maybe the gRPC is better, which is the request response based model, right? So, but there are now new patterns coming up for async, like using WebSockets, by duplex communication and all. And you can explore how you can implement that with Kafka, event-driven, and WebSockets. So these are your choices. That doesn't mean that you need to use all of them or choose one of them. Again, the key messages, apply the pattern. I've seen this in my last application when we were doing it. We had still some REST services because in that scenario, that was working out best, and that was something which is simple, and we didn't need to over-engineer that part. So select the right pattern based on what you see is suitable in that context. So there is no bad choice here. The next one is about how you manage your growing list of microservices. So often in this number of microservices, it typically is you start small and you start splitting your monolith into microservices, and it quickly you will see that it start growing, and you will have 50, 100 and thousands of services. So in my experience, when you are maintaining like 20, 30 services, it's still maintainable. You can maintain even a catalog in your Excel file. That's not a problem. You can use an application performance monitoring tool for tracking dependency, not a problem. But the key challenge when it start growing, then basically you'll see that there is a lot of dependency and failures, and different things will start popping up. So keeping and your team composition is also another factor which you need to see, and that becomes a key challenge in the current distributed architecture context. And my recommendation, and we have done this, we have burnt our finger where we started building something in-house. I would strongly say that don't reinvent the wheel. There are now companies like Aurelius, and I've seen this product where I'm just quoting the key features which I liked from there, is where I can see that it takes care of most of the need which I have to do it myself. That how do you create a catalog of services? How do you keep the versioning? How do you keep the inventory of your services? How do I support the blue-green deployment? So all the things which you need is something which you can get out of the box. So I think explore that. I'm not recommending that use that tool only, but explore that and understand, instead of using something which is or building something which you think that it's going to take a lot of time, you can reuse something where somebody has solved that problem for you. So management of services, recommendation is go for and find the suitable out of the box solution and make it more operational. So moving on, the 8th lesson is more about related to previous point. How do you ensure governance in distributed or microservices architecture? And why governance is important, and because in my experience, I have seen that when we started building microservices architecture, that outer architecture, and when I say outer architecture, service itself is very simple, right? Service because it's micro, it has to be simple. It's talking to a database, it's sending the data back to the other components, whether it's event driven or REST based. But the other elements, like how do you ensure security, how do you ensure communication, how do you monitor, where's the platform as a service, the other elements play a much bigger role. And then it becomes a key challenge, because what happens is that people start developing their own kind of a solution where they start building their own patterns. Within the organization, you will see, I've seen that every team has started developing their own set of tools and technology, and then it becomes I would say, in my experience, it becomes a chaos, because then you are solving the same set of challenges, and you are again over engineering, maybe wasting time on something which somebody has already done in the other part of the organization. So the key recommendation I would say in this case is to promote the culture of a platform team. And this I have seen in many organizations now, they have started adopting this, because Platform team is nothing but considered as a common team, which is basically responsible for creating those common considerations and accelerators. And you don't need to say that these are the only set of people who are doing it. You can also participate and give your ideas to that team. But essentially it's all about maintaining consistency in the architecture. So that helps a lot in my experience. That helps a lot to establish common set of practices, guidelines, and guardrails which will help the entire team. And especially microservices evolved that we wanted to give independence to the team, right? So again, by having governance, that doesn't mean that you have to enforce something so that the team do not lose that autonomy, right? You need to make sure that you remain consistent with certain principles, and I'm quoting Martin Fuller's key principles, which he highlighted as part of microservice architecture. But you still need to adhere to these principles and put the governance so that the people are following certain things, and you are consistent within the organization. So moving on to the next one, where eventually you are at a stage, your service is developed, and now you are deploying the service, and then there are many choices, right? So in my experience, which I have seen, is that we have again many choices, like the framework part, which we have seen, and like the business expectation. The key challenge is now business doesn't worry about technology. They just need that there is no downtime, there is a quicker time to market. So they have a simple expectation, and sometimes I see that even the key meeting these simple things it's very difficult because of the complexity behind the scene, right? So the key recommendation I would say is, and that's coming out as a common standard, is that if you have not adopted Kubernetes right now, you need to start considering as part of your strategy as a foundational framework. If you're a developer, learn Kubernetes. That's going to be a new Linux, new standard in the industry. And I've been using for last 5+ years. I've seen that, how it has grown from, grown towards becoming an industry standard, right? So leverage the patterns which are the ecosystem around Kubernetes is also emerging. So I've laid down certain strategies that when you are using Kubernetes, if your team is not too technology friendly, you can use managed services, you can use serverless. You don't need to, Kubernetes doesn't mean you have to manage Kubernetes yourself. So you have many choices. So talk to your architect, talk to your leadership team, understand what strategy you want to apply, and follow that path. So, but adopting is the key part, and you will not regret that, because the more you worry about infrastructure, the more, the less focus you will have on your solving the business issue. So I think that's the essence which I can see that's happening in my experience. So we are down to the last one, but the most effective one, I would say, the troubleshooting in microservices architecture. So when you develop something, right, and when you hand it over, right now the handover part is something which is gone in these days. So the key principle, if you consider, like, DevOps is not just tools and technology. DevOps is more about, if you have developed it, you will operationalize it, and you might have to maintain it as well. In microservices, I have seen that it's easier when you are a monolith. And I'll give you one example where if you are tracing a request in a monolith, if you're using a monitoring solution or a performance monitoring solution, you can easily see the path of your trace. But with microservices, the distributed tracing, I've seen people, it's difficult for tools as well as people to understand the vast majority of services. And it's very difficult to troubleshoot when the issue comes in production. So it results into higher incident response time, impacting business, impacting SLO. So what do you do if you start seeing that? And I've seen this in many occasions, and we are all seeing this in different parts of the organization. So my recommendation is, there is again nothing which is a silver bullet, but you have to start shifting left. That means, instead of seeing those issues in production for the first time, try to make sure that you enforce all observability practices like metrics, traces, events, and logs, everything towards in the early stage in your QA environment, in your UAT, or in dev environment. And Google has published great sort of SRE practices, and you can refer to that book. And I would say that I have learned a lot in the last few years following those practices. So it's good to see that how the operations people experience the application and their pain. So you need to spend time understanding the production operationalization aspect of it, and you need to train people with the right set of tools and technology, and fail fast. I think that's the key message. So like they say in the book, is hope is not a strategy. So you need to understand that you need to make sure that if you put the right process with the right set of tools to make sure that your system is operational and you can easily resolve issues in production. With that being said, I think these are the 10, you can say, challenges, and I've shared my experience, and hopefully you might get benefited out of it. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening to me. And you can follow Atilius on the links here, and you can follow me. I've shared my Twitter, LinkedIn, and Medium link. So happy to engage in any conversation. Thank you so much.